drug statistics.
Free Palestine!
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 Thank you so much for coming out today in the snow and the cold. It's so great to see all of you and all the different orgs out here for our yearly Human Rights Day March. I'm Drake, this is Anthony, and we are emceeing today for the Anti-War Committee. We have great speakers lined up for you today, and then a march to make ourselves heard in Uptown, which is always fun, marching through Uptown. Briefly, I just wanted to say I'm 30 years old this year. I've never seen or heard of the US government actually giving a fuck about human rights without being absolutely forced to. Instead, they trample on human rights here and everywhere. In my lifetime, they've invaded and killed millions of people in every different region in the world using human rights as an excuse. As a kid in Kansas City, I sent my $1 weekly allowance to George W. Bush every week and sang with my elementary school choir on the TV and the radio in support of the Iraq War. You can boo that. That war was the culmination of over a decade of destruction, invasions, and sanctions that killed somewhere around 1 million Iraqis. And we thought it was for human rights. Every news station said so. That's a shame to confuse kids like that, and today's children are once again made to stand and pledge allegiance every day to a country with war plans on every continent, hell-bent on nothing but destruction and mass murder for Wall Street, while the US media spins it every time as the fight for democracy and peace. They've been talking about war with Iran, for instance, my whole entire life, especially recently using the language of women's rights. But have US interventions and sanctions and drone strikes ever helped anyone? No! I'm very thankful that I saw signs and bumper stickers and protests in Kansas City against wars, against the police, for abortion rights, gay rights, all that stuff, all the people's issues, because that inspired me and I carried that in my heart. And I'm hoping some people will see us today and carry our messages from our different movements in their hearts, because the US empire will never act any fucking differently. If we support basic human rights to education, healthcare, housing, self-determination, anything, we've got to get organized in grassroots orgs and we've got to fight back.
That's right.
When human rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When human rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Thank you. So our first speaker is going to be from Mirak. Mirak fights for legalization for all, an end to immigration raids and deportation, an end to all anti-immigrant laws, full equality in all areas of life. They've been leaders locally in the fight for municipal ID, the Clean Dream Act, and driver's license for all since 2006, and they just had a major action that we'll hear about. So here's Montana with Mirak.
We had a great turnout. More than 150 people stood with us. And yeah, we stopped traffic for about 2 hours downtown Minneapolis. And we just really appreciate everyone who came out, because right now DACA and TPS are in danger, which could mean so right now DACA and TPS are in danger, which could mean millions of immigrants with these statuses would become undocumented and suddenly under threat of deportation. In Mirak, we fight for legalization for all because this should be a human right. We won't back down. We told Amy we will be back, and we will.
We will be back!
We will. recently wrapped up our campaign at the city level to get a municipal ID implemented so that anyone who lives in the city of Minneapolis, regardless of immigration status, can have a photo ID. The city council showed us how anti-immigrant they really are by voting down funding for this in the budget. But our work on this campaign, speaking at each budget hearing, meeting with the city council members, and collecting signatures on our petitions did get the city council to increase funding for immigration-related services like DACA applications, and this was a victory.
Okay.
And finally, we would like to ask you all to join us this coming year as the DFL has control of the state legislature to demand that driver's license for all is finally passed in Minnesota. With the lack of identification comes the lack of protection. Being undocumented means it is dangerous to drive to work. If pulled over while driving to work, immigrants without documentation can be detained and eventually deported. Without documentation, it's harder to get a job. It's harder to pick your kids up from school, all of this stuff that we do every day. And every commute becomes a risk. Having no documentation forces many people to work in unsafe jobs, consisting of manual labor, long hours, being out in extreme temperatures, and often not getting their rightful pay. Due to rampant wage theft in immigrant-heavy industries like non-union construction. It means less ability to afford safe and secure housing, often being forced to live in neighborhoods with less breathable air and less drinkable water. So, we are having a rally at the Capitol on the opening day of the Minnesota legislative session on January 3rd, 2023 at noon at the Capitol in St. Paul, and we would really love to see you all there. The fight for driver's license for all in Minnesota has been a vital struggle for human rights for years, and this is the year we're going to win. So when immigrants are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When immigrants are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
All right, thank you, Montana. So I'm really excited for our next speaker. So we in the Anti-War Committee, we do not just oppose wars beyond these fake borders of the United States. We also oppose wars at home, and that means that we stand in solidarity for Black lives. So our next speaker is from Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar. They're a community group dedicated to the fight for justice for those who have been harmed by the police. They've been organizing for justice ever since the killing of Jamar Clark by the Minneapolis Police Department on November 15th, 2015. They fight for community control of the police through their work for the Civilian Police Accountability Commission. TCC for J are leaders in this work. Please welcome Loretta Van Pelt.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure and an honor to speak at this event, to talk about the victories and the struggles that we face, to show that our experiences are intertwined. Even if we all are fighting for different things, like climate change, immigrant rights, body autonomy, or police accountability. The common factor is those of us who are marginalized, those of us who are oppressed, and those of us who think we do not have a voice all want to be treated with humanity and respect. I organize, as stated earlier, I organize with the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar. We are fighting for community control of the police. We also stand in solidarity with families of those who were killed by the police. And we are fighting for BIPOC folks and working class folks to use their collective voice to say how things should go in their communities when it comes to policing. And not fake city commissions that will continue to do nothing and not listen to the very people who are affected.
That's right.
We thank those of you who have stood in solidarity with our work, as well as with the families of those who have lost loved ones to police violence. It is like I said before, our issues are intertwined, and we must continue to fight together to have more victories in the struggle. Let's continue to have our boots on the ground and keep hitting these streets. It's like the chant, the people in power are scared and will do any and everything to separate us and think that all these issues only affect one group. All these issues affect all of us. How does the chant go? The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much. Let's hear it again for Loretta and TCC for Jay. Oh, good, some support. Yeah. So our next speaker is from Climate Justice Committee. They were part of the struggle against Line 3, and they're a grassroots group that connects climate change to issues of sovereignty and self-determination for communities and indigenous people. Recently, their fight is with the East Phillips neighborhood, or in the East Phillips neighborhood. Yeah, not with the neighborhood. In opposing a city government plan to permanently toxify that neighborhood by bulldozing the roof depot. So here's Kay.
The right to breathe air and drink water are human rights. But clean air and water and the ecosystems that support life are all under threat because of a few rich and powerful corporations and governments. Since scientists first started to sound the alarm about greenhouse gases in the 1950s, famine, wildfires, tropical storms, and floods have increasingly harmed people. In the last decade, 21.6 people have been forced to uproot and migrate. And greenhouse emissions are impacting food security through the migration and deaths of pollinators, pests, crop diseases, and the disruption of the water supply across the globe. The effects of climate change are not equal around the globe and have disproportionately affected the poorest parts of the world, countries that have nowhere near the same culpability for the climate catastrophe. Closer to home, the construction of Line 3 oil pipeline here in Minnesota has polluted the waterways and devastated aquifers in lands already experiencing drought. Most of the consequences come down on tribes like the Anishinaabe, who rely on these at-risk ecosystems for not only food but culture and industry. And the fight for climate justice is intricately connected with the fight for racial justice. It is not by coincidence that the areas with the most population are in Black and Brown communities such as East Phillips. And the Climate Justice Committee has joined in the fight against the demolition of the East Phillips Roof Depot building. It sits on heaps of arsenic from the previous inhabitants. The city of Minneapolis, with Mayor Frey, are hell-bent on increasing the population in the most diverse neighborhood in Minneapolis. We all have a fundamental right to drink and breathe clean water and air from this planet, but who is protecting this right? Not the US government. It is the 6th largest greenhouse polluter in the country, clocking in at 50 million metric tons of CO2. And it is not to mention all of the damage they do overseas. Diplomats aren't protecting this human right either. Recycled promises and money are sent as a result of schmooze conferences like COP27 to soften the blow of the crises. Without an actionable plan for the changes that we need, this is nothing but a Band-Aid on a broken arm. And that leaves it up to us. Only through collective action can we build a sustainable future full of the food, oxygen, and water that we all need. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, CJC. So next up, we have Robin, who is a member of SDS and also of a brand new coalition born out of a march and rally after the determination of the overturning of Roe that brought out 10,000 fucking people into the streets of downtown Minneapolis. The Minnesota Abortion Access Coalition is an exciting new coalition that formed to defend women's and reproductive rights in the post-Roe world. They've been active in campaigning against fake abortion clinics, otherwise known as crisis pregnancy centers. Robin?
Everyone hear me okay? Yeah. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin. I am an active member of Students for a Democratic Society, or SDS, as well as the Minnesota Abortion Action Coalition. This Human Rights Day is a significant one for both SDS and MNAC because this year SDS shifted our campaign in reaction to the leak on May 2nd of the Supreme Court's plan to overturn Roe v. Wade, which they eventually did on June 24th. This was a vile and criminal injustice on behalf of women and people with uteruses, both nationwide and on an international scale. This was not just a political issue that the court could leave in the hands of individual states, as they say. It was a denial to proper access to the basic human right of bodily autonomy. Say shame to that.
Shame!
I say that this decision had an international impact because it sets a precedent. It gives the rest of the world further evidence that the U.S. is behind on solidifying women's and reproductive rights, and that this issue is far from the priority for even the highest levels of government in our country. It also shows us that our constitutional rights are not set in stone. Contrary to what Democrats want you to believe, the laws that are currently protecting gay marriage, the Indian Child Welfare Act, and basic civil rights for Black and brown people are hanging in the balance solely because the court's conservative majority wants to make this country a safe place only for white cis hetero men. We know from the makeup of our communities in Minneapolis and abroad that this is not representative of the majority of society. The world is really made up of queer Black and brown revolutionaries who struggle to make the world more just and safe for all people affected by false promises made by politicians and billionaires. The Supreme Court decision made this summer, which prompted the local Twin Cities people's movements to form MNAC, taught us that voting blue no matter who will not save us. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who has been serving for 3 years and was just reelected, doesn't truly serve the average resident's interest or demands. Walz has consistently stated that as long as he is governor, our reproductive rights are protected. But how much are his words really worth when there are only 8 abortion clinics in Minnesota compared to 90 crisis pregnancy centers in the state? Centers, boo! Centers that attempt to convince patients to avoid abortions at all costs with evangelical Christian rhetoric and ineffective solutions like abortion reversal pills. Tell me that ain't right. That ain't right. I say that his words don't mean shit to me and that I'm personally tired of these empty statements. In order to truly make effective change, we need people to get on the streets at all costs. We know that politicians and the state as a whole are scared of our true power when we come together as a community because of how they react to us. When we shut shit down, they are intimidated. SDS's emergency protest turned out students and community members in the thousands. And when the uprisings occurred, we noticed a concrete shift in attitudes supporting change for a standard of safety that is constructed by the people for the people, like CPAC. There was a change in the air, and getting active in your communities and sticking with people that are highly organized means that we are leaps and bounds closer to meeting the demands that we aim to win. Yes. To seeing the change that is not just talked about, but is a material force that makes this world a better place for all marginalized people. When I say I know we will win, that is a real promise. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Repeat after me, dare to struggle.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
Thank you.
Abortion is a human right. That is why we have to fight.
Abortion is a human right. That is why we have to fight.
Abortion is a human right.
That is why we have to fight.
Abortion is a human right.
That is why we have to fight.
Thank you so much for that, Robin. Next, we have Minnesota Workers United. They're here to give us the working class perspective, the union perspective on human rights. They're always in the fight and on the picket lines and so much more, and we're really happy to have them. Here's DGP.
Hi everybody, how's it going? It is so good to be with everyone today because we know that the fight for human rights is an essential fight that we all have to take part in. Right now as we speak, there's a war going on at an international scale, at a national scale, at a state level, and at the local level. And the sides are very clear. The rich, the powerful, the war profiteers, the big business people, the political elite, and then there's us, the working class, oppressed people. we must stand together and bring our coalitions and movements together, because what we know is that bourgeois politics has failed us on the issue of human rights. They failed us on the issue of war. They failed us on the issue of healthcare. They failed us on the issue of wages. They failed us on the issue of education. While bombs drop on Somalia and in my home in the Philippines, while assassinations take place in the global south all over the world, we see corporations getting richer. We see war profiteers getting richer. We see politicians using this as a way to boost their political careers. But all of that money that we spend dropping bombs and sowing hatred and division is money we could be using at home. It's money we could be using to educate our children. It's money we could be using to fix some of the pollution and environmental degradation that's happened in the world. It's a way that's money that we could be using to fund abortion clinics instead of crisis pregnancy centers. And make no mistake, this is a war against not just black people, against not just brown people. It's not just a war against women or trans people or queer people. This is a war against all of us, a war against working class people. And this isn't a Republican-Democrat issue. This isn't a right or left issue. This is an issue of justice, and this is an issue of humanity. What we've seen at the national level is Democrats green-lighting billions of new dollars to drop more bombs on more countries. What we've seen at the state level is Democrats say, yeah, working class people, you delivered us a majority, but no, we don't want to do any of your shit. Money for our schools, just a little bit. But driver's licenses for all, not yet. They keep telling us to wait and to wait and to wait. And there's a poet in the Twin Cities who likes to get up on the dais at City Hall and read poetry while at the same time she is blocking the rights of black people to have community control of our police departments. She's blocking immigrants and native folks from being able to determine their own destiny in their own neighborhoods, and she is blocking immigrants from having things like a municipal ID, from getting services like DACA. And she's voted against us as working class people, defunding a department that takes on wage theft. This is the war that we're fighting, and it's a war that red and blue doesn't matter. The only thing that matters in this war is green. It's money to these bastard corporations, pig cops, and cowardly politicians. And the thing that stops it is us. Because of the inaction at the federal level and at the state level and at the city level, MIRAC blocked the streets for 2 hours in the cold weather because they said enough is enough. You all are braving the cold weather because war and attacks on our human rights is enough. We've had enough of that. We have to get uncomfortable. We have to get a little bit cold. We have to get a little bit outside of our comfort zones because this war is only starting. We have not even begun to see the assaults that they will have and that they will bring on our communities. So we need to get in the streets because when they come for our neighbors, we must protect them. The governments won't protect them. We must protect them. So we need to get in the streets. We need to stay in the streets. We need to bring more people to the streets because human rights, at the end of the day, this is an issue of humanity and an issue of justice for everyone. So solidarity to everybody, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, DGP. Can I get a boo for Andrea Jenkins? All right, so our next speaker, I'm very, very excited for. Before our next speaker comes up, I want to say something. We in the Anti-War Committee, we say that we're anti-imperialists. And what does anti-imperialism mean? Anti-imperialism, for us, in the belly of the beast of imperialism, means that we are also anti-colonial. And we support nations' right to self-determination. And what that means here on stolen Dakota land, first and foremost, means tribal sovereignty.
That's right.
That means our fight as anti-war activists means that we must stand in solidarity with indigenous comrades for tribal sovereignty. So our next speaker is from the Red Nation. The Red Nation is dedicated to the liberation of Native peoples from capitalism and colonialism. Please welcome Melanie Yazzie.
Hello? Cool. Gee, Anthony, you stole my speech. No, I'm just kidding. Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Yazzie. I'm new to this place. I'm new to Minisho Tamakoche. Thank you, Anthony, for acknowledging these lands. I am Dene. I'm Navajo. I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation. I come from way south of here. And I'm brand new. I'm a faculty member at the University of Minnesota, unfortunately. That shit-ass land grab institution. I am an assistant professor of American Indian Studies. And the reason I came here wasn't for my career. You know, it wasn't for any of those reasons. It was to continue the fight for Indigenous liberation.
Hell yeah!
You know, I co-founded with many other incredible relatives the Red Nation in 2014 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have fought against resource extraction, MMIWG, police violence. Police kill Native people at higher rates than any other group in the United States, if folks didn't know that. And we took a turn about 4 years into the Red Nation because we understood. We had long-standing solidarity with Palestine. Very honored to stand here next to the Palestinian flag. We understood that as Indigenous people who have fought the oldest anti-imperialist struggle against U.S. empire, we are nations, right? We are nations that were massacred. Our lands were stolen, and we continue to exist under occupation by the United States. We are occupied by the United States. And so our liberation is an anti-imperialist struggle, right? All struggles for Native nationhood and tribal sovereignty are inherently anti-imperialist struggles. And because we understand that our struggles are categorically anti-imperialist, we also understood that we needed to stand in a spirit of internationalism with all anti-imperialist struggles for national liberation, right? In the global South. Because the truth is, it's Indigenous nations here in the belly of the beast, and it is global South revolutionary nations and revolutionary struggles and movements that are the special beacon for all of our struggles globally. The Palestinian struggle. The alternative is being formed in those spaces. It's not being formed here in the United States. And this American exceptionalist notion within the movement in the United States that has the audacity never to even recognize settler colonialism as a form of imperialism, first of all, right? To know that this is stolen land and that the return of that land needs to be at the center of any kind of anti-imperialist struggle or formation or politics here in this country. But that oftentimes people here in the movement think that the things we do here are exceptional and that somehow we export, right? The exceptional politics of the United States to the rest of the world. That is total nonsense, bullshit, ahistorical crap, okay? It's not true. We understand as the Indigenous people here that we are learning from our relatives who are in struggle in the global South, and they are the ones teaching us how to be better relatives. They're the ones teaching us how to be true revolutionaries and to have that spirit and to never let it go in what we're doing. You know, I come from a people who survived a death march to a concentration camp where they were interned for 4 years. And we marched back to our homeland, what little of us that were left. And today I mean, my nation is like pro-colonial, pro-capitalist, sometimes pro-Trump. You know, I don't agree with all of those politics, but nevertheless, Diné people, especially grassroots people, especially women, and especially youth, have such a strong spirit of resistance that we will never let go of. And we absolutely will never be removed from our homelands. We will never relinquish that relationship. And I know I was invited today to talk about ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, and I've already gone over my 3 minutes. But the reason why I wanted to give this background and this history is because the people today in Global South revolutionary struggle, in Indigenous liberation struggle here, the people at the front of those struggles are women. They're Native women. They're young people. And it's not a coincidence that the U.S. settler state is trying to overturn one of the only laws that was hard fought, it was hard won in 1978, after generations of our children were genocided right? In boarding schools and in residential schools. This is a very overt act by the U.S. settler state to try to gut the momentum and the real power that Native and Indigenous women and children and youth have today in the political climate here in the so-called United States. And so, yes, we must fight against, the overturning of ICWA for the same reasons, right? That we must fight against the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Yes, it's about human rights. We don't really need to frame Native liberation in the framework of human rights. We really don't. Because at the end of the day, we were here first. And all you need to know is that you need to give the middle finger to settler colonialism and to imperialism. Okay, that's all you need to know. And you don't have to be Indigenous to be down for Indigenous liberation. You just have to show the fuck up, like we are here today, and you just gotta be down. Because as we say in the Red Deal, this is a vision for liberation that the Red Nation wrote. It came out last year. Indigenous worlds, the world after colonialism and imperialism fall, because they will fall, right? They will fall. The world after that is a world in which many worlds fit. It's not a world in which Indigenous people are in charge and then everyone has to go back to Europe and all that shit that I hear all the time from settlers who are very scared by rising Indigenous power, right? It's a world in which many worlds fit, and we treat each other in a spirit of cooperation and true equality and true democracy. And we treat the land the same way, right? We don't try to own the land and exploit it. And so, at the end of the day, the struggle for Native liberation here is the same anti-imperialist struggle that people are fighting everywhere. And we must look to Native women and Indigenous women and children and youth as the special beacons and leaders of the struggle for the revolution to come. Because it is coming. I think we can all feel it in our bones. It's gonna be a difficult struggle, but it's gonna be fucking beautiful too. And I can't wait to be in struggle with all of you here in this new place where I find myself, and for the Red Nation to continue to come out and to be here with the people as we struggle together. Thank you so much for having me today.
When tribal sovereignty is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When tribal sovereignty is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Thanks so much. We had a speaker that was going to come from the Haiti Justice Committee, and they weren't able to make it. So anyway, I just wanted to say real briefly, yesterday or the day before, there was an op-ed in the New York Times that said Haitians are begging for U.S. intervention, that they want to be invaded. And I just want to say, fuck that, and keep your eyes open to this, because it's going to heat up again.
And don't read that paper!
Yeah,
That's right!
that's right. Yeah, don't cross the picket line in the first place with New York Times. But another thing I wanted to say is, in the 90s, the last time we invaded Haiti, not very long ago, Joe Biden was asked in an interview, what do you think about this invasion? He said, frankly, it wouldn't matter if Haiti sunk under the ocean to U.S. interests. So that's our president right now. So we've got to keep our eyes peeled for what they're going to do to Haiti, and we need to keep it in our thoughts. So hands off Haiti.
Hands off Haiti!
Next, we have speaking from our very own Anti-War Committee. For those who may not be familiar with us, Anti-War Committee has been opposing U.S. imperialism since 1998. Protesting bombing of Iraq. We organized to end U.S. aid to Israel, oppose all U.S. military interventions, as well as racism, militarism, and political oppression at home. Here's Christine to talk.
Hey everyone. Thanks for calling out Palestine earlier too, Melanie. That was great, and a perfect preface for what I'm going to talk about. So again, I'm Christine from the Anti-War Committee, and as everyone has talked about so far today, the U.S. likes to use human rights as an excuse to justify intervention in other countries like Iran, Iraq, Syria, Haiti, among others, and at the same time notoriously violates human rights at home and abroad. The U.S. sponsors the destruction of human rights all over the world, and one of the most heinous examples of the U.S.'s support for human rights abuses is its investment in Israel. The U.S. gives billions upon billions of dollars every year to the oppression of the Palestinian people. We are directly paying for the abuse of Palestinians, and I am tired of it. Are you?
Yes!
Palestinian human rights are far from secure. Every day, Palestinians experience violence, barricades, checkpoints, and face restrictions on access to human essentials like water, food, housing, medicine, all at the hands of Israel and the United States. Palestinians had their rights violently taken from them over 50 years ago, and yet are still fighting for those rights. Generation after generation of Palestinians struggle for their rights under Israeli apartheid. And despite facing a barrage of bombings, killings, imprisonments, and harassment, the Palestinian people continue to fight and win.
Yes.
Things do change. We are seeing support for Palestine grow and be brought front and center in the media. The propaganda spewed from US and Israel is fading fast. Palestine will be free. Here in Minnesota, we are asking the State Board of Investment to divest from Elbit Systems, an Israeli surveillance and defense company that builds weapons and security that target Palestinian borders as well as the US-Mexico border. We don't want our tax dollars invested in violence and state oppression.
Nope.
You can sign our petition today to ask the State Board of Investments to divest from Israel. We have clipboards if you would like to sign the petition and if you haven't already. So let's continue to fight for Palestine here in Minnesota. From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. So we're about ready to march.